The smoke drifted like shredded ghosts across the ruined plain, glowing faintly under the broken light of the moon fragments scattered across the sky. Elias Ward trudged between corpses, armor plates hissing as the cooling systems fought the heat of the battlefield. His visor flickered with warnings, radiation left over from a plasma bombardment, biohazard markers blinking, his suit politely reminding him that he hadn't eaten in 14 hours. He ignored all of it. He always ignored the suit. It complained more than he did. His boots crunched over crystallized ash. In the distance, human drones zipped through the air like impatient hornets, scanning for survivors. Not that anyone expected to find any. The vampire legions were efficient, humans, desperate. This moon colony had turned into dust faster than command could pronounce retreat. Elias paused beside a collapsed ridge. His HUD marked something faint, life, but extremely weak. Probably an injured human soldier barely clinging to.
No.
Wrong heat signature. Wrong pulse pattern. Wrong everything. His hand drifted to his sidearm, fingers tightening, as he stepped deeper into the crater. The air shimmered with dark residue, what the scientists called quantum bleed, but soldiers simply called bad news. Elias muttered to himself, "Great. If I grow an extra arm from this, I want paid overtime." Then he saw her. She lay half-buried under shards of blackened stone, her body twisted, her long hair matted with dust and dried silver blood. Her ears, long, elegant, tapering like the wings of some alien sylph, twitched faintly as her chest lifted in the barest breath. Even drained nearly to death, she radiated something unearthly, beauty, cold as starlight, and a presence that made the air feel too tight around him. A vampire. More than that. Her armor was ceremonial, woven with thin threads of luminescent energy, bearing sigils only the highest nobility used. Elias swallowed. Oh, perfect. He hadn't found a random soldier. He'd found trouble in royal packaging. He aimed his gun at her head. That was protocol. That was common sense. Humans and vampires had been at war for longer than his grandmother had been alive. If command saw what he was doing, they would order him to fire immediately. But she opened her eyes. They were unfocused, filled with panic and pain. No arrogance, no cold superiority, none of the predatory confidence her kind was infamous for. Just fear. A very real, painfully human fear. Her voice came out in a cracked whisper. "Please, don't." It should not have mattered. It should not have reached him. But something in that single word hit him like a punch. Elias swore quietly. Damn it. That's cheating. He lowered the gun an inch. That was all it took for his brain to start sabotaging him with inconvenient questions. What kind of soldier was he if he executed someone lying helpless in a crater? What kind of human? Even a vampire. He moved closer, kneeling beside her. Her breath rattled, shallow and unstable. He checked her wounds, jagged burns from plasma rounds, deep fractures, and worse, the unmistakable signs of blood starvation. Vampires didn't die easily, but without replenishment, even royalty burned out like dying stars. She needed blood. Human blood would work. His brain shouted, "Absolutely not." His heart whispered, "She's dying." And his mouth betrayed him entirely. "Well, I've already made plenty of bad decisions today. What's one more?" He pulled off a glove, grimaced, and sliced open his wrist with a sterilized blade. The smell of iron hit the air, sharp and bright. The princess's eyes widened, pupils trembling as instinct fought weakness. Elias held his wrist above her parted lips, muttering, "If you bite, I swear I'm going to haunt your empire." As the first drop touched her tongue, her body jerked, then settled. The air seemed to thrum, a faint vibration under Elias's skin. He ignored it, too worried watching her shallow breaths deepen, her trembling limbs steady, her color shift from corpse gray to something faintly luminous. Then everything around them changed. A pressure pulsed outward, a ripple through reality itself. His HUD glitched, flickering. A shock of cold shot through his arm up to his spine. For a second, he felt something alien brushing the edge of his thoughts, like a whisper, like a memory that wasn't his. Her hand shot up, gripping his forearm with surprising strength. Her long ears twitched sharply as she inhaled, eyes focusing entirely on him. Possessive, ancient, unmistakably intense. He yanked his arm back. Hey, personal space. Her voice was stronger now, though still ragged. You gave me your life, your blood. You saved a royal heir. Her eyes glowed faintly, a color impossible to describe. You belong to me. Elias blinked. No. No, I definitely don't. You do. I really don't. You do, she repeated, as if the universe itself agreed. He stared at her. She stared at him. The silence stretched. Finally he said, "Fantastic. I knew I should have stayed in bed." The princess tried sitting up, grimacing as her body fought to mend itself. Elias reached out before thinking and steadied her. She stiffened at the contact, then relaxed, though she attempted to hide it with regal dignity. He glanced around nervously. "Look, your people, my people. Everyone here wants both of us dead for different reasons. We need to move before someone scans this crater and—" His suit's alarm blared. Multiple heat signatures incoming. Vampire scouts. Fast. He pulled her arm over his shoulder without waiting for permission. "Okay, princess, if you don't want me dead, how about we both not die today?" She lifted her chin with the stubborn pride of someone who was still technically royalty even while limping. "My name is Liriana," she said breathlessly. "Princess Liriana Voss, heir to the Crimson Crown." "Well, I'm Elias Ward, heir to absolutely nothing unless you count credit card debt. Nice to meet you, Your Radiance." He paused. "By the way, if we get killed because you walk slowly, I'm blaming you in the afterlife." A faint smile tugged at her lips, unexpected, reluctant. "Humans are absurd. Glad we're on the same page." He half-carried, half-guided her across the battlefield, weaving through shattered mechs, twisted steel, and drifting ash. Her steps grew steadier by the minute as his blood worked through her system. Her movements regained a kind of predatory grace, though her pride clearly struggled with being supported by someone shorter, squishier, and far too sarcastic. They reached the edge of the battlefield just as the vampire scouts descended. Elias ducked into the ruins of a crashed transport ship, dragging her inside. The interior smelled like burned circuits and melted plastic. Sparks danced overhead like angry fireflies. Liriana leaned against a wall, breathing easier now. "The bond is forming," she murmured, almost to herself. Elias froze. "The what?" "The blood bond. Royal blood mixed with yours. It ties us. I can feel your heartbeat, your emotions." Faintly, but enough. He stared at her in horror. "Please tell me this is temporary." "It is not. Of course it's not." She touched her chest, confused and annoyed all at once. "Your emotions are loud. Loud. I'm trying not to panic." "That explains it." He opened his mouth to argue but stopped when a distant tremor shook the crashed ship. Scouts were nearby. Too close. He risked a glance through a cracked viewport, 3 vampire soldiers scanning the debris with lethal calm. Elias whispered, "They're hunting you." "No," she corrected quietly. "They are hunting you." He looked at her, really looked, and understood. If they killed him, the bond would break. The princess would be purified of human influence. It was the logical choice for her people. Liriana's jaw tensed. "I will not let them take you." He blinked. "Well, good. Because I also vote against being taken." Another tremor shook the ground. Elias reached for his rifle. "All right. On 3, we run." Liriana tilted her head. "You are injured, exhausted, and comically under-equipped for outrunning an Imperial strike team. Thanks for the pep talk." She straightened, power returning to her limbs, the faint shine of her aura growing. "Stay close to me." That was the plan. The scouts drew nearer. The bond thrummed between them, unwelcome, inconvenient, powerful. And then they ran, a human soldier and a vampire princess, their fates tangled by a single drop of blood, racing together into a future neither of them could predict. Elias had been chased by many things in his life: debt collectors, malfunctioning training drones, an overly affectionate robot dog at base, but nothing compared to sprinting across a collapsing battlefield with a vampire princess gripping his arm like a lifeline. Or like a very determined captor. Hard to tell. Sand and ash whipped past them as the vampire scouts hit the ground behind them, their boots making that unnervingly soft impact that meant they were using anti-grav stabilizers. Elias risked a glance over his shoulder and immediately regretted it. "They're faster than us," he gasped. Liriana didn't even look back. "I know. You could at least pretend to be surprised. I am reserving my energy for actual threats." "Wow. Thanks." A plasma bolt cracked against a shattered mech beside them, showering them with sparks. Liriana stumbled, still not fully healed, and Elias pulled her behind a chunk of fallen hull plating. The blaster fire hissed past the metal like angry hornets. He caught his breath. "Okay, Princess, we need a plan. Preferably one that doesn't involve dying, exploding, or being stabbed by your elegantly dressed murder squad." "They are not elegantly dressed," she said, offended. "They are scouts." He peeked around the edge. "Well, they look elegant for scouts. Maybe that's why they run faster." Liriana didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, she lifted her hand, palm glowing faintly with a low-level energy surge. Elias felt it through the bond before he saw it, like a warm pulse under his skin. She pressed her palm against the hull plating and whispered something in her native language. The metal shifted, bending outward and curling like a protective shell. Elias blinked. "That is both terrifying and impressive." "It is a simple resonance manipulation," she said, trying not to sound proud. "Metal remembers the shape it wishes to return to. I only encouraged it." "Great," he muttered. "So the metal has opinions. Perfect." They crouched in the shadow of the bent hull. The scout's footsteps approached again, slow and deliberate. Liriana shut her eyes, and Elias felt her mind brushing his, an odd sensation, like someone was rifling through his emotions but politely pretending they weren't. "Stop thinking about sandwiches," she whispered. "I can't. I'm hungry. And stressed." "Your stress tastes strange." "You can taste my emotions?" "Yes." "Okay, I officially hate this bond." "Likewise." The footsteps grew louder. Elias pulled out his rifle, checked the charge, and hissed, "All right, Princess, if this goes bad, I just want you to know." One of the scouts leapt onto the hull above them. Elias froze mid-sentence. Liriana opened her eyes sharply. She moved her fingers in a quick slicing motion, and the bent metal beside them suddenly vibrated. The scout above dropped down, scanning with his visor. Elias mouthed, "We're dead." Liriana mouthed back with royal fury, "No." The metal erupted outward in a burst of sound and force. The scout flew backward, tumbling across the ash like a broken marionette. Elias barely had time to complain before Liriana grabbed his arm and yanked him up. "Run," she commanded. "I was already doing that." They sprinted across the wreckage until they reached the jagged edge of the battlefield, where the ground dropped into a steep ravine carved out by a plasma bombardment. Elias skidded to a halt. "We're not jumping that." "We are," Liriana said. "We are absolutely not." She grabbed his shirt and pulled both of them over the edge. Elias didn't scream, but only because he couldn't breathe long enough to. The two plummeted, weightless, the wind tearing at them. Liriana wrapped her arms around him tightly, her long ears flattening against her head. A moment before they hit the ground, she thrust her hand downward. A shimmering field bloomed beneath them, a bubble of distorted air and crackling energy. They hit it, bounced, rolled, and finally came to rest in a cloud of dust. Elias groaned. "I think my soul left my body. If you see it floating around, please return it." Liriana stood up with far more grace. "You exaggerate." "No. I dramatize. It's different." She didn't bother arguing this time. They had landed in a ravine filled with old terraforming infrastructure, pipes as big as transport ships, cracked domes, dusty ventilation fans that hadn't spun in decades. A broken sign flickered overhead. Station 07, Atmospheric Rebalancing Module. Below it, lights sputtered in sad neon. Elias muttered, "Looks friendly." Liriana's eyes glimmered. "It will shield us from scanners." "All right," he sighed. "Let's hide somewhere less explodey." They slipped into the shadows of the defunct facility, weaving through abandoned walkways and humming conduits that still leaked the occasional spark of blue ion mist. Elias kept scanning for life signs, while Liriana walked with greater confidence now, her strength returning, her posture straighter, her aura no longer flickering but steady and cold. He noticed and said, "You're looking better." She paused. "You gave me life. It would be an insult not to use it well." That was weirdly poetic. "I am royalty. We speak dramatically by default." "Ah, so it's genetic." They found a maintenance corridor that led into a room lined with cracked hollow panels and malfunctioning drones. A single emergency light glowed on the ceiling, bathing everything in an eerie red. Elias sat down on a crate, finally letting exhaustion crash through him. Liriana lowered herself gracefully onto the opposite crate, though she still winced slightly. Silence settled in. Not uncomfortable, just strange.
No.
Elias rubbed his face. "We need to figure out what this bond actually means. You said it ties us." "It does more than tie." Her voice was quiet, but not uncertain. "It links. Royal blood is ancient. Part biological, part something beyond." She gestured vaguely upward, as if pointing at the laws of the universe. "Your blood mixed with mine, willingly given. That is not a small thing." "Well, it wasn't a big thing either. I only gave a few drops." "That was enough." He opened his mouth to ask more, but she continued, "I can feel you, Elias. Your heartbeat, your emotions, your presence, and you can feel me. Not clearly yet, but it will grow." He swallowed. "Great. So I'm basically a walking emotional radio tower." She tilted her head. "You have a very loud emotional spectrum." "Stop judging me." "I am not judging. I am observing." "Feels like judging." Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Not the regal, cold kind. A real smile. Small, crooked, almost human. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You did not have to." He looked away. "I couldn't just leave you." The bond pulsed between them, warm, steady, undeniable. Before either could say more, the station lights flickered violently. A droning alarm vibrated through the metal walls. Liriana stiffened. "They found us." Elias stood, charging his rifle. "Great. Round 2. But she grabbed his wrist. "No. This time, we do not run. We're fighting." "We are defending," she corrected. "There is a difference." He swallowed, feeling the bond thrum again, more intensely now, as if responding to danger. Their thoughts brushing. Their breaths in sync. He muttered, "All right. Let's defend." Liriana's eyes glowed with a cold, determined fire. Together, they turned toward the sound of approaching footsteps. The war had finally noticed them, and it wasn't ready for what the two of them had become. The alarm thrummed through the old terraforming station like the heartbeat of some ancient metal beast, rattling dust from the ceiling and sending small echoes skittering down the empty corridors. Elias stood with his rifle raised, jaw tight, trying to look brave even though his insides felt like a bowl of trembling pudding. Very heroic pudding, he told himself. Pudding with dignity. Liriana moved beside him, her fingers trailing lightly against the wall. Where she touched, the metal vibrated in response, subtle, like a whisper between old friends. Elias felt the faint hum through the bond too, a soft resonance that wasn't quite sound and wasn't quite sensation, but lived somewhere in the space between. "They are still far," she murmured. "But they are coming. Can you sense them through the bond?" "No." "Through the floor." "Right. Of course. Because that's normal." He tapped his boot. Maybe I should try. Any advice? Should I? I don't know. Listen really hard. She gave him a flat look. You are not attuned. Let me rephrase. Should I pretend to listen so I feel useful? That would suit you better. You're getting sassier, he muttered. Must be the healing. She didn't deny it. They crept deeper into the control chamber, passing flickering hollow terminals and broken drones half embedded in the floor. Most of the machines here had long been abandoned after the terraforming project failed, leaving the station frozen in a state of slow technological decay. Exposed cables twitched occasionally with leftover current, moving like lazy metallic snakes. Elias tried not to step on any of them. He didn't want to find out if they bit. When they reached the main control room, Liriana stopped abruptly. Elias bumped into her back and immediately pretended he hadn't. In the center of the room sat a large cylindrical core, glowing faintly, pulsing with residual power. A warning hologram flickered above it. Ventilation system offline. Pressure unstable. Elias squinted. That looks like it's about to explode. Liriana circled it, inspecting the damage. It is not unstable. Merely neglected. That's exactly what I'd say if something was unstable. She ignored him, placing both palms on the metal casing. The glow under her skin brightened as she murmured something under her breath. Elias watched as the flickering warning softened into a steady hum. You fixed it? He asked. I encouraged it. You encouraged a ventilation core to behave? The machine wished to function. It also wished for maintenance, fewer bullet holes, and probably a vacation. Liriana stepped back. It will mask our life signatures temporarily. They will have difficulty tracking us. Fantastic. Should we celebrate with snacks? Oh wait, we don't have snacks. Or water. Or hope. She tilted her head. Your despair is unnecessarily theatrical. I'm a soldier. We cope with drama. But the reprieve didn't last. The station trembled as a plasma blast struck the entrance above. Dust shook loose from the rafters. The hollow echo of boots, too synchronized, too swift, reverberated down the corridor. Liriana's expression shifted. Not scouts, she whispered. Elite hunters. Your people sent elites? Elias demanded. Why? Because of you? Or because of me? Because of both. Her voice held a strange mix of frustration and embarrassment. Royal bonds are not a trivial matter. You keep saying royal bond, like it's normal. Is this normal? No. Great. They will not allow me to be bound to a human. They will try to sever the link. How? By killing me. Yes. He stared at her. You should have opened with that. Another blast hit the outer wall, metal screaming in protest. Liriana stepped in front of him. Elias grabbed her arm. Hey, don't do that. I'm not letting you stand between me and some kill squad. Her gaze flickered, ancient fire stirring beneath her calm. You gave me your blood. It created a bond. It is my duty to protect you. He tightened his grip. Right, well, I didn't sign any royal vampire paperwork, so we're doing this together. Or not at all. A flicker of emotion, warm, shocked, almost fragile, crossed her face. It vanished quickly, replaced by a faint smirk. You argue too much. Thanks, I try. They moved together to the far end of the control room. Liriana extended both hands, and for a moment, Elias felt pressure in the air, like gravity bending, like the world inhaling. Metallic pieces around them lifted from the ground, shivering as if waking from a long sleep. Pipes curled into place. Panels rotated. Scrap folded in on itself. Elias watched, wide-eyed. Are you building something? Because it looks like you're building something. Please tell me it's a mech. A barrier, she corrected. Disappointing. But okay. The metal snapped into a dome around them, sealing them in a protective cocoon just as the elite hunters entered the station. Elias heard them, The smooth whisper of cloaked armor, the low vibrational hum that marked their weapons. "They brought null blades," Liriana murmured. "That sounds bad. They cut through energy shields. And flesh. And bone. And—" "Okay, enough details." The hunters approached the barrier. A blade scraped along the outside, leaving a glowing scar of red-black corrosion. Another struck with force that made the dome rattle. Elias steadied his rifle. "If they break through, I'll take the one on the left. You take the other 5. "Acceptable," she said. That was a joke. It was not funny. It felt funny. "They will breach soon." He swallowed. "Then we should run." Liriana shook her head. "There is no exit. Their formation blocks every route." "Then what do we do?" She hesitated. "We use the bond." He froze. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "that I draw power from your presence. Your life. Your blood. With your permission." Elias blinked. "Are you asking to use me as a battery?" "A conduit. That's just a fancy battery." Another blow shook the barrier. Liriana took his hands in hers. Her palms were warm, too warm, and her expression was no longer regal but earnest, almost vulnerable. "I will not take more than you can give." He exhaled shakily. "What happens if I say no?" "We die." "All right," he said quickly. "Let's do the bond thing." She pressed her forehead to his. The world went quiet. The bond surged open like a door being kicked off its hinges. Elias felt her, every emotion, every flicker of pain, every thread of fear and determination, bright and sharp and overwhelming. And she felt him. His heartbeat. His breath. His frantic humor. All of it. Energy flowed between them, a spiral of light and shadow, human and vampire. The metal dome exploded outward in a brilliant shockwave. The hunters were thrown across the chamber, slamming into walls with bone-crunching force. The ones who recovered quickly raised their weapons, but Liriana stepped forward, surrounded by a shimmering halo of power crackling like solar fire. She moved faster than the human eye could track, a streak of luminous motion. She twisted a null blade out of one hunter's grip, struck another with a blast of energy that rippled like liquid starlight, and pivoted with the grace of a dancer and the force of an avalanche. Elias tried to help, but mostly tried not to get vaporized. One hunter lunged at him. Elias fired, but the bolt barely scratched the armor. The hunter raised his blade, and Liriana appeared between them, catching the strike with her bare hand. Metal shrieked. Sparks burst. She shattered the blade with a twist and hurled the hunter into a support beam hard enough to dent it. Elias stood frozen. I think I love this bond now." Liriana didn't answer. The last hunter activated a cloaking array and vanished. Elias's heart jumped. "Where?" Liriana grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "He aims for you. I can feel his intent." "Fantastic. How do we stop someone we can't see?" "We do not need to see him." She lifted her hand. The air shimmered. The bond lit up like a rising sun, heat pouring through Elias's chest. It didn't hurt, but it felt big, vast, like standing in a tide. Liriana's eyes glowed with brilliant, predatory focus. The cloaked hunter flickered into view, just as the entire room resonated with a pulse of energy. His cloak shorted out. He stumbled, exposed. Liriana struck with a single, precise burst of force. The hunter flew backward and hit the ground, unconscious. Silence settled. Elias leaned against a railing, breathing hard. "So, good news. We're alive. Bad news. Literally everyone else is dead." Liriana didn't smile. She didn't speak. She swayed slightly, and Elias rushed to catch her before she collapsed. He lowered her gently to the floor. "Hey, stay with me. Don't do the dramatic fainting thing. That's my job." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Too much energy. The bond. It took more than I intended. Well, take it back. I cannot, not now. He pressed his forehead to hers, as she had done moments earlier. The bond pulsed weakly between them. You gave too much, she breathed. And you used too much, he said softly. So we'll fix it. Together. She blinked up at him, her long ears trembling faintly. You are reckless. And you're stubborn. A faint smile tugged at her lips. We are an unfortunate pair. Speak for yourself. I'm delightful. She closed her eyes, not unconscious, just resting, saved now by the bond that nearly burned them both. Outside the shattered room, the station groaned as old systems powered up unexpectedly, awakened by Liriana's surge of energy. Lights flickered. Machines stirred. And miles above them, something ancient and dangerous finally noticed the pulse of royal vampire magic mixing with human blood. Neither Elias nor Liriana heard it. But the Empire did. And it was coming. The moment the Leviathan-class cruiser slipped into the violet orbit of Vardros, Cale felt the weight of every choice that had dragged him here. His blood on her lips, her vow binding them together, her long elven ears flicking with every emotion she tried to hide. The war-scarred world below glowed like a wounded gemstone, its storms curling with bioluminescent lightning, yet all he could focus on was the steady presence beside him. Lyria stood close enough that he felt the faint electromagnetic hum of her royal implant through his armor. It buzzed like a heartbeat. A vampire heartbeat, something that shouldn't have been possible at all. But then again, she had been dying when he found her. And he had done the stupidest, bravest, most impossible thing. He saved her. Now she wouldn't let him go, and today, it seemed, the entire vampire empire had arrived to discuss that. The cruiser's docking clamps clicked, and Lyria's fingers brushed Cale's hand, soft yet trembling. If they try to separate us, she whispered, stay behind me. Actually, no, stand beside me. If they see you behind me, they'll think I've domesticated you. Domesticated? Cale muttered. I don't fetch. You fetched me from death, she shot back, smirking. Does that count? He rolled his eyes, but it eased the tightness in his chest. Humor had become their quiet shield, proof that even in a war older than either of their species, two people could meet in the ashes and figure out how to laugh again. The blast door opened. A wave of cold, metallic air rolled in like a warning. Her father, the Emperor, stood waiting. Cale had expected a towering monster dripping with ancient arrogance and fangs carved from star ice. Instead, the Emperor looked strangely ordinary. Well, ordinary if ordinary meant a pale, elegant figure with luminous crimson eyes, ears only slightly longer than Lyria's, and a cape dramatic enough to smother a small moon. His gaze narrowed the moment it landed on Cale. This, he said to his daughter, is the human soldier you endangered our empire for? Father, Lyria said with unnerving calm, this is the human soldier who saved my life. The Emperor paused, studying Cale with the cold calculation of a scientist evaluating an interesting but potentially toxic sample. You gave royal blood to a human, he said. You created a bond. Yes, Lyria answered simply. And now you believe that, what? This soldier belongs at your side? In my halls? In our future? Cale opened his mouth, prepared to deliver something brave, honorable, and appropriately heroic. Instead, what came out was, Sir, your majesty, imperial person, I'm not trying to steal your daughter. Lyria's ears shot up. Steal me? I mean, rescue you? That's worse. I'm really losing this conversation, aren't I? The Emperor stared at him, then actually pinched the bridge of his nose. By the stars, he's honest. Lyria folded her arms proudly. I like him. A murmur echoed across the chamber. Vampire nobles, generals, advisors, faces carved from centuries of war, shifted uneasily. The idea of a vampire princess openly choosing a human was enough to rattle the bones of ancient tradition. The Emperor lifted a hand. Silence snapped through the room. Lyria, he said, do you intend to keep this human? Cale immediately protested. I'm not a pet. Yes, she said firmly. Kale sighed. Okay, that sounded bad in context. The room erupted into chaos. Voices rose, talk of ancient laws, forbidden bonds, political instability, and the risk of a new war blooming like a bruise across the stars. But Lyria stepped forward, shoulders squared, chin high, long ears angled in defiant challenge. If you force us apart, she said, you will not only break the right of life debt, you will break me. I will not return to the Empire. I will not lead. I will choose exile before I abandon the one who saved me. Kale's breath caught. She had power, real power, but she was willing to give all of it up. For him. The Emperor's stare softened only enough to show the faintest crack in his ancient mask. You would give up your birthright for a soldier with no political value and an alarming lack of social instinct? Kale raised a hand. In my defense, I wasn't trained for interspecies royal diplomacy. I was trained to not die. Lyria's lips twitched. And yet you keep finding new ways to almost die. The Emperor exhaled a long, almost weary sigh, the kind only a parent with millennium-old stress could produce. At last he spoke. Very well. The chamber fell silent. If my daughter's choice is this human, he said, then he will not be cast out. He will not be hunted. He will not be treated as lesser. His gaze pierced Kale like a laser. But understand this, soldier, the bond you formed is permanent, ancient, unbreakable. Her life is tied to yours. If she falls, you fall. If she thrives, you thrive. Kale swallowed hard. Sounds like a relationship with extra steps. Lyria elbowed him. Kale. What? I cope with humor. Cope more quietly. The Emperor continued. There will be trials. There will be scrutiny. The Empire will resist. Humans will resist. But if you both choose this path, you will walk it together, and you will shape the future of both our worlds. Kale looked at Lyria. Lyria looked at Kale. And somewhere beneath the fear and uncertainty, he felt something steady take root. A decision. A direction. A future he hadn't known he wanted until she appeared on that battlefield bleeding out, her life slipping away until he gave her his blood. He reached out and took her hand. I choose this, he said softly. I choose you. Her fingers tightened around his, warm and unyielding. And I choose you. A quiet ripple passed through the nobles, a mixture of disbelief, awe, and the grudging acceptance that sometimes history didn't change through battlefields or treaties. Sometimes it changed because two stubborn idiots refused to let each other go. The Emperor lifted his chin. Then so it shall be. The war ends here. The future begins now. Kale exhaled, shoulders loosening as though an entire planet's worth of tension slid off him. Lyria leaned closer, whispering, We didn't die. That's a good sign. Yeah, he murmured. I'm calling that a win. Then she smiled, soft, bright, a little mischievous, as she added, Just wait until my mother meets you. Kale froze. There's more of your family? Oh yes, Lyria said cheerfully. And she's scarier. He groaned. Fantastic. Can't wait. But even as he joked, the truth settled warmly in his chest. No matter what came next, politics, danger, awkward family dinners, he wasn't facing it alone. They had survived blood, war, destiny itself. Now they would survive the future. Together.